All right, welcome back to One Bills Live. Chris Brown, Chris Trapasso with you here on a Monday, day before 3-day mandatory minicamp begins for the Buffalo Bills. And that is our topic of discussion today. We're asking you who you think has the best chance to parlay minicamp into a better training camp opportunity. I don't know about you, Chris, but let me see here. One, two, three. I picked four guys that I thought would be prime candidates for something like this. I'm curious to see if any of our choices overlap. I don't know how many you have. How many did you come up with?
I also had four, and I,
Okay.
I don't know if we'll have the same four, but I bet a few will overlap.
Okay. Why don't you lay them on me here? Give me your guys and tell me why.
Okay. I will first go with the one that we've been talking about for weeks, Chase Claypool, because during what you guys were able to witness during OTAs, oh, hey, there was only one big play from the offense, and it was Chase Claypool making a catch on a throw from Mitch Trubisky or Josh Allen. I just want to see if he can continue that kind of momentum that he might have going into even mandatory minicamp to be that wide receiver 4 or 5, the special teams guy. So he's my first pick. I think Andy Isabella, because of the return differences, that we're just going to see more action on those kick returns. I mean, they used him back there last year, but maybe he can be someone that, I don't know how close to the real thing the kickoffs are going to be during mandatory minicamp, but I'm assuming the coaches will want to rep that as real as possible because it is so new. Beyond that, I'll go Dorian Williams just because we don't know where Matt Milano is in terms of his rehab. I know the injury happened in October, but we know from just everything that the Sean McDermott era has been about with injuries, they like to kind of take things longer than try to rush guys back onto the field. I loved Dorian Williams coming out of Tulane last year, and I think when he can just see the ball and get the ball, the speed, the range, the just ferocious nature really comes out with him. And I think DeWayne Carter, the rookie from Duke, because he's someone that was just a really good 3-down player at Duke, generated a pressure almost 10% of his pass rushing snaps the last 2 seasons for the Blue Devils. And anything close to 10% in college in terms of a pressure creation rate at defensive tackle is pretty good. I love that he's just nonstop motor. He kind of feels like that player who would be really good in practice just because he's going 100 miles per hour every snap. And I long thought that the Bills needed another up the field pass rusher behind or even next to Ed Oliver on the defensive line.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of similarities here. I'll tell you about the ones that we both had first. I had Dorian Williams as well, just because with Milano still working back from
Yeah.
injury, Williams is getting a lot more time on the field. I mean, he's just getting
Mm-hmm.
more reps through the whole spring. And I think very quietly down the stretch last year with Milano out for the season and them mixing and matching different packages and such, Williams got time on the field. And then when Dodson had the injury in the Miami game in week 18, and then you had Bernard go out, you saw a lot more of Dorian Williams in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And he popped out more than just a flash here or there. There would be a handful of plays, notable plays, where you would see Dorian Williams show up, whether it was a third down stop to force a punt, a tackle for loss. I felt like he was coming on. And if the Bills could have stayed in the playoffs longer, I was just getting the sense that we were going to see more and more from him in terms of playmaking ability as the season ended. It was just a shame that the playoff run ended because I thought he was just hitting his stride in terms of giving them more. And I think his film at the end of the year is going to convince this coaching staff, hey, let's just keep giving him looks and see how much he can continue to grow. It's a heck of an intriguing option for them, especially even if they get to training camp and Milano is still limited. Like maybe he's on the
Mm-hmm.
field, but they've got him on a pitch count, so to speak.
Yeah.
If that happens, I think Dorian Williams is a direct beneficiary. So I agree with you on that one. I also had DeWayne Carter, and I can't remember if I've done enough shows with you here in the spring as to whether or not I mentioned this to you. I mentioned it to somebody, but and and this is probably because Brandon Beane mentioned him in the same way right after drafting him, but I'm getting a lot of Kyle Williams vibes from DeWayne Carter.
Ah,
Um,
I can see that.
Super duper practice player, um, understands the game
Overachiever.
in an advanced football IQ way for a rookie. That was Kyle through and through his first year in 2005. So, or 2006. So I don't know. There's just something about him where I'm getting, Kyle Williams vibes from him as a rookie. And then you think about the departures of Jordan Phillips, Huna Ford, Linval Joseph. I realize you have Austin Johnson, who's probably going to be Daquan's rotational backup, at the one, but behind Ed Oliver, it's kind of a mixed bag right now. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
a job that can be seized. And right now, my money's on Carter based on early returns. I realize they're not in pads yet. We're talking about a line position, and pads matter, but I don't know what it is. I just don't see much changing there with what we should expect from Carter. The other guys I had, Curtis Samuel. Um, Obviously, we know that after Khalil Shakir, the receiver position is a jumble. But if there's someone that has an edge, to me, it's Curtis Samuel because of the familiarity with Joe Brady and Joe Brady's familiarity with Curtis Samuel. When you think about it, you've got a whole bunch of guys that Joe Brady is watching practice tape on and trying to figure out within my scheme, what can they do? What can't they do? Where do I put him in an advantageous position to help us the most? He knows that coming in the door with Curtis Samuel. I think that puts him at a distinct advantage to, if he's able to just remind Joe Brady of his playmaking ability within this scheme, I think it's game, set, match for him as far as having a pretty important opportunity to maximize his time on the field at the receiver position, which, as we know, is beyond Shakir, a veritable unknown in many ways. So I think that gives him a leg up. And then the last guy for me is Kyer Elam,
Good
who
one.
I think, just due to the absence of Rasul Douglas for a majority of these voluntary practices, has afforded him an opportunity similar to that of Dorian Williams. A lot more time on the field with a new staff in the secondary. I know Mike Dan has been there, but you're talking about Jamil Adai, who's the new corners coach, and he's getting long looks at him, and he has some familiarity with him based on his coaching background from the University of Florida. Or no, he was at Miami. I'm sorry. I don't think there is crossover there between those two previously. But in any event, a lot more time on the field than maybe he would have had
Mm-hmm.
if Douglas was there during the majority of the voluntary workouts. So for that reason, I think he's got a chance, even with Douglas expected back for the mandatory minicamp, to kind of parlay things into a good opportunity for himself in training camp. So those are the four that I had. But yeah, we were 2 out of 4 there on
All
overall.
right, not bad, not bad. What I would say, like the one thing that just kind of stands out to me that of what you said in one of your selections, wasn't it just like a week or two ago when Joe Brady was speaking to the media that, and it's to your point of he's watching other film of or watching the film of other receivers trying to figure out what they can do, what they can't do. Joe Brady directly mentioned like, oh, you can use Curtis Samuel out wide in the slot, in the backfield as a running back on jet sweep. So he already has an idea of what Curtis Samuel is capable of in terms of pre-snap alignment and usage to kind of be, part John Brown, part Cole Beasley, part Isaiah McKenzie.
Right.
He already understands that. So I think that's a really good selection, because even in mandatory minicamp, as they're starting some installs for the regular season, he can say, hey, look, let's try to use these different formations, different alignments that I know work with Curtis Samuel.
Here's where it always comes back to with me when it comes to coaches and dealing with new additions to the roster. The number one thing that coaches want from a player is the ability to trust them on the field with their assignment, with their execution, whatever it is. The reason why is their job is literally riding on the player's ability to execute the plays they are calling. they want to put guys out there they can trust. And to me, that's already a built-in component for Curtis Samuel. That
Yep.
trust has already been previously established. So I think that's a tremendous advantage for him. I think he's got to fall flat on his face to not have a top 3 role in the passing game at the receiver position for this offense for Curtis Samuel because of past history with him and Brady. So, and look, everything we know about Samuel is character is through the roof, work ethic is right there with it. So there's no reason to even think it could possibly go the other way. So I just think that's been a largely unspoken advantage that I think
Yep.
Curtis Samuel has over all the other newcomers to the roster at the receiver position.
And I think too that we are so bullish, rightfully so, I think, on Khalil Shakir. And it kind of feels like all of the national media is after leading the league in catch rate. We talked about that a lot, how well he played down the stretch and in the playoffs. To me, just from watching the film and just remembering scouting them coming out of Ohio State and Boise State, respectively, they're kind of similar players. Like they can be in the slot, or if you really need to in a pinch, they can play on the perimeter. They're not super big, but they have enough quickness to get open. They're not ridiculous athletes, but Curtis Samuel certainly has some serious speed, a little bit faster than Khalil Shakir. They're just those really movable chess pieces that I think are more valuable today than they were even 5 or 10 years ago. Even when Curtis Samuel was coming into the league, where teams didn't really know what to do with him, now it feels like Joe Brady maybe got a taste of Khalil Shakir and how good the offense can be with him as kind of a focal point of it. I think that beyond his familiarity and his time spent with Curtis Samuel, that was maybe part of let's get another kind of Khalil Shakir type player for this Bills offense.
Yeah. And that's why I think those two guys might be the two that move around the most.
For sure. Good point.
As the offensive system unfolds, I think those guys are going to be depended upon to be the most versatile of the entire receiving core, Samuel and Shakir.